The Great Hall on the planet Vareth Prime was the most beautiful place in the known galaxy. Its walls were made of living crystal that sang soft music when light touched them. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed inside the building. Representatives from over 1,000 different alien species had gathered here today for an event called the Proving. The Proving was a tradition older than most civilizations. Every 10 years, each species in the Galactic Council would send their greatest warrior to demonstrate their power. It was not about fighting to the death. It was about showing off. It was about reminding everyone where they stood in the order of things. Commander Ethan Cole stood near the back of the arena floor, trying to make himself invisible. This was not easy when you were the only human in a room full of creatures that considered humans to be barely more than clever animals. The alien standing closest to him was a Cathari named Verteth. The Cathari were made of living crystal, similar to the walls of this very hall. Verteth stood 12 feet tall, and his body bent light in ways that hurt human eyes to look at. He was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. On Ethan's other side stood the Voran champion. His name was Krath, and he looked like someone had combined a gorilla with a shark and then given the result 4 arms instead of 2. Each of those arms ended in claws that could cut through steel like paper. His skin glowed with soft blue light that pulsed with his heartbeat. There were others too. The insect-like Zin, whose armor was actually part of their body and had never been broken in recorded history. The snake-like Seleth, who could move faster than the eye could track. The massive Gruth, who stood 20 feet tall and could survive in the vacuum of space without any protection. And then there was Ethan, 5 feet and 11 inches of ordinary human meat and bone. But it was not his body that drew the stares and whispers. It was his armor. Every other champion wore magnificent battlesuits. The Cathari champion's armor was grown from rare crystals found only in dying stars. The Voran suit was made of something called liquid metal that could reshape itself in combat. The Zin did not need armor because their own shells were stronger than anything they could manufacture. Ethan's armor looked like it had been pulled from a garbage pile. Deep cracks ran across the chest plate like old scars. The left shoulder piece was clearly not original and had been welded on from some other source and not welded well. Burr marks covered almost every surface. Dents and scratches told the story of damage that had been survived but never properly repaired. The whole thing was slightly too big for him, and it moved awkwardly when he walked. Verteth noticed him looking around and let out a sound that the translator in Ethan's ear converted to laughter. "Tell me, human," Verteth said, his voice like glass wind chimes in a storm. "Did your species send their garbage collector by mistake? Or is this truly the best warrior your kind can produce?" The aliens nearby laughed. The sound came from 100 different mouths and translated into 100 different versions of mockery. Ethan did not respond. He had been ordered not to respond. Not yet. Lieutenant Maya Santos stood behind the small Earth delegation banner, which looked sad and plain compared to the massive holographic displays other species had brought. She was the only other human in the entire hall, and she was struggling to keep her face neutral. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. She wanted to tell them. She wanted to scream the truth at their smug alien faces. But Ethan had given her strict orders. Wait. Watch. Let them talk. Krath, the Voran champion, decided that words were not enough. He walked over to Ethan with heavy steps that shook the floor. Then he reached out with one massive clawed hand and rapped his knuckles against the human's chest plate. The sound was hollow and sad. A piece of the armor actually flaked off and fell to the ground. "This is not armor," Krath said, his voice a deep rumble. "This is a joke. I could kill you with one finger, little human." One tap, and you would break. You are probably right, Ethan said quietly. This response clearly surprised the Varan. Champions were supposed to boast. They were supposed to threaten back. This human just agreed? Then why are you here? Krath demanded. Why come to the proving if you know you will lose? I did not say I would lose. I said you could probably kill me easily. Those are different things. Krath stared at him for a long moment, then laughed and walked away, shaking his massive head. The human is broken in the brain as well as the armor, he announced to the crowd. This will be entertaining at least. More laughter. Always more laughter. The High Arbiter entered the hall. The Arbiter was not a physical being. It was pure energy, contained in a special vessel that allowed it to interact with the material world. It was older than most of the species in this room. It had overseen every proving for the last 3,000 years. Welcome, champions, the Arbiter said, its voice coming from everywhere at once. Welcome, delegates. The proving will now begin. As tradition demands, the youngest spacefaring civilization will demonstrate first. A pause. Every eye in the room turned to Ethan. Humanity. You may begin. Ethan walked slowly to the center of the arena. The floor beneath him was made of some kind of glass that showed stars beneath it, a window into space itself, or at least a very good illusion of one. He felt very small standing there, surrounded by thousands of aliens who expected him to fail. Maya watched him go. She knew what was coming, and even though she had seen it before, her heart was pounding. The other humans in the diplomatic corps knew too. They had spent months preparing for this moment. But first, Ethan had a story to tell. He turned in a slow circle, looking up at the tiers of seats that rose around him like a bowl. Thousands of faces looked back. Some curious, some bored, most simply amused, waiting to see the primitive human embarrass himself. Ethan began to remove his helmet. His brown hair was matted with sweat beneath it, and his face was older than his 34 years. There were lines around his eyes that came from seeing too much. Before I demonstrate, he said, his voice amplified by the hall systems so that everyone could hear clearly. I need to tell you about this armor. Vorteth made an exasperated sound. Must we listen to human stories? We came to see combat, not hear fairy tales. Ethan ignored him completely. 32 years ago, he said, my species made first contact with alien life. It did not go well. The hall grew slightly quieter. Some of the older delegates knew what was coming. We met the Harvax Collective. Now the silence was complete. The Harvax were no longer a topic anyone discussed casually. They were a warning, a memory, a reminder of what happened to species who grew too cruel, and humanity had been their final victim and their final mistake. Ethan touched the deepest crack in his armor, the one that ran from his left shoulder all the way to his right hip. This armor, he said, belonged to my father. The silence in the hall was so complete that Ethan could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. Every alien in the massive chamber had stopped moving. Even the ones who had been whispering mockery to each other moments ago were now frozen, waiting. The Harvax, Ethan continued, his voice steady and calm, believed in one simple rule. The strong eat the weak. That was their entire philosophy, their religion, their law. When they found a weaker species, they did not trade with them. They did not talk to them. They harvested them. He began to walk slowly around the arena as he spoke, his damaged armor creaking with each step. When they found Earth, we had just begun to explore beyond our own moon. We had no warships, no energy weapons, no shields. We did not even know that aliens existed. To the Harvax, we were perfect. Billions of soft, helpless creatures just waiting to be collected. Maya watched from her position near the Earth banner. She had heard this story before, of course. Every human child learned it in school. But hearing Ethan tell it here, surrounded by the species who had watched humanity suffer and done nothing, that was different. That was harder. They invaded on a Tuesday morning, Ethan said. I was 2 years old. I do not remember the day itself, but I have seen the recordings. Their ships blocked out the sun over every major city on the planet. They did not ask for surrender. They did not make demands. They simply began killing. He stopped walking and looked up at the assembled delegates. 640 million humans died in the first month. Some of the aliens shifted uncomfortably. The number was not large by galactic standards. Some wars killed billions, but the way Ethan said, it made it feel enormous. Each word carried weight. The Harvax were not just stronger than us. They were so far beyond us that fighting them seemed impossible. Their personal shields could stop any weapon we had. Their armor laughed at our bullets. One Harvax soldier could walk through an entire army without slowing down. He touched the welded patch on his shoulder. But we fought anyway. Not because we thought we could win. We fought because the alternative was to watch our children be taken away in cargo ships and processed like meat. The Varan champion, Krath, had stopped smiling. His forearms hung at his sides, and his glowing blue skin had dimmed slightly. Even a warrior culture like the Varan understood what it meant to fight without hope. My father was not a soldier, Ethan continued. His name was Daniel Cole, and he fixed machines for a living. Air conditioners, refrigerators, heating systems. He had never held a weapon in his life before the invasion. He was scared of heights and hated the sight of blood. Ethan's voice caught slightly, and he paused to steady himself. When the Harvax landed their command ship in the center of our continent, the remaining military leaders called for volunteers. They needed people crazy enough to try to board the ship and destroy it from inside. Everyone who volunteered knew they would die. The shields on that ship could stop nuclear weapons. Getting inside meant getting close enough to touch it, and the Harvax would never allow that. He lifted the helmet he had been holding and looked at it. The visor was cracked. The communication systems had been torn out long ago. 312 humans volunteered. They built armor from whatever they could find. Vehicle plating, stolen pieces of Harvax equipment, scraps from destroyed military bases. This patch on my shoulder came from the hull of a school bus. The same bus that had carried my sister to safety 2 weeks earlier. The image was so human, so simple, that several delegates found themselves leaning forward. A school bus, children, the small, ordinary details of a life interrupted by horror. My father wore this armor when he boarded the Harvax command ship. The mission was supposed to be simple. Get inside, plant explosives near the reactor, and die buying time for the bombs to work. Instead, they found something unexpected. The Harvax had been so confident in their superiority that their internal security was almost non-existent. Why guard against insects? A bitter smile crossed Ethan's face. The team made it further than anyone thought possible. They fought through corridors designed for creatures 3 times their size. They killed Harvax soldiers who had never imagined that prey could fight back. And when they reached the reactor, he held up the chest plate, showing the massive crack that ran across its surface. My father was shot here, point blank. A Harvax enforcer put an energy weapon against his chest and pulled the trigger. By every law of physics, he should have died. The armor should have vaporized. He should have been ash. Ethan set the chest plate down gently. He was not. The armor cracked. The energy dispersed just enough. And my father, with a hole burned through his chest plate and his skin blackened beneath, killed the Harvax enforcer with a piece of metal rebar he had picked up from the floor. The Zin champion made a clicking sound. The translator rendered it as something close to disbelief. Then he walked to the reactor. He was dying. Anyone could see that. The other survivors told me later that they tried to stop him, tried to take over his mission, but he refused. He had come to do a job, and he was going to finish it. Ethan's voice dropped lower. The reactor could not simply be destroyed. The Harvax had built-in safeguards. Someone had to manually override the safety systems, which meant staying next to the reactor as it went critical. My father volunteered. He ordered the rest of the team to run, and then he sat down next to the reactor controls and began entering commands. Maya wiped her eyes. She had heard this story 100 times, but it never got easier. He had about 4 minutes. The survivors said he spent 3 of those minutes recording a message for my mother. For me, for my sister. He told us he loved us. He told us to be brave. He told us that humans were stronger than anyone knew, and that one day we would prove it to the whole galaxy. Ethan looked around at the silent hall. Then he blew up the ship. The explosion killed him instantly, along with 60,000 Harvax soldiers and their entire command structure. Without their leaders, the invasion fell apart. The remaining Harvax ships fled. Earth survived. He picked up the armor pieces and began putting them back on, one piece at a time. This armor is broken because my father broke it saving our species. These cracks are not flaws, they are metals. This does not fit me because it was never meant to fit me. I wear it to remember. I wear it so that everyone I meet knows what humans are willing to sacrifice. Lord Teth shifted uncomfortably. His earlier mockery seemed very far away now. But you wanted a demonstration, Ethan said, fastening the last clasp. You wanted to see what humanity can do, and I am going to show you. But first, you need to understand something important. He faced the crowd. I am not wearing my father's armor because I have nothing better. I am wearing it because I wanted you to see where we started. The garbage, the scraps, the desperation. His hands moved to the clasps he had just fastened. Now I will show you where we are now. And he began to remove the armor again. Piece by piece, letting each section fall to the floor with a hollow clang that echoed through the silent hall. The last piece of Daniel Cole's armor hit the floor with a sound that seemed to echo forever. Every eye in the hall was locked on the human standing in the center of the arena. And every eye went wide. Beneath the broken, rusted armor, Ethan Cole wore something else entirely. It was black. Not the black of paint or shadow, but a black so complete that it seemed to drink in light itself. The suit covered him from neck to toe like a second skin, so perfectly fitted that it might have been part of his body. Thin lines of deep red ran across its surface, pulsing gently like veins carrying blood. The pattern they formed was complex and beautiful, shifting slightly with each breath Ethan took. The hall's sensor systems immediately began screaming warnings. Several delegates pulled out scanning devices and pointed them at the human, then stared at the results in confusion. What is that material? Verteth demanded. His crystalline voice had lost all its earlier amusement. Our instruments cannot identify it. It does not match any known substance in our databases. Maya stepped forward. This was her part of the demonstration, the explanation that would help these ancient species understand what they were seeing. We call it Prometheus Weave, she said, her voice strong and clear. It was developed 15 years ago by a team led by Dr. Hannah Blake at our Advanced Research Institute. The material is not exactly matter. It is not exactly energy. It exists in a state between the two. The scientific delegates in the crowd began talking rapidly among themselves. The theoretical implications of such a material were staggering. Impossible, said a Cathari scientist near the front. Quantum states cannot be maintained at macroscopic scales. The uncertainty principle would. We found a way around that, Maya interrupted. We had to. The Harvax taught us that playing by the rules would get us killed. So we stopped playing by the rules. Krath, the massive Varan champion, had risen from his seat. All four of his arms were tense and his claws were extended. He was a warrior, and his instincts were telling him that something had changed. That the weak prey he had mocked was suddenly not weak at all. "What does this suit do?" he demanded. Ethan smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but there was something in it that made several nearby aliens take a step back. "Let me show you." He raised one hand. The red lines along his arm flared brighter, and suddenly his outlines seemed to blur. He was still there, still visible, but something about him had become uncertain, like looking at a reflection in moving water. "The suit is connected directly to my nervous system," Ethan explained. "It responds to my thoughts faster than I can consciously form them, and its primary function is not to protect me from damage. It is to prevent damage from occurring in the first place." He tapped his chest, and his hand seemed to pass through his own body for just a moment before solidifying again. "The Prometheus weave exists partially outside normal space-time. When something tries to hit me, a bullet, a blade, an energy beam, the suit shifts. Not me, the suit. It moves into the space between moments, the gap between seconds. To hit me, you would need to hit where I was, where I am, and where I will be, all at the same time." The Zin champion stepped forward. Its insect body was tense, its mandibles clicking rapidly. "That is defensive capability," it said through the translator. "Impressive, perhaps, but defense alone does not win battles." "You are right," Ethan agreed. "Defense is only the beginning." He moved. There was no other word for it, but even that word was wrong. One moment, Ethan was standing in the center of the arena. The next moment, he was on the far side of the hall, 100 meters away. There had been no blur of motion, no sense of travel. He had simply been in one place and then in another, as if the space between had never existed. Several delegates screamed. Others reached for weapons that they quickly realized would be useless. Ethan appeared again, this time directly in front of Krath. The Varan champion tried to react, tried to bring his claws up in defense, but Ethan was already gone. He appeared behind the Zin champion, then beside Vorteth, then in the center of the arena again. Each transition was instant and silent. "Spatial folding," Maya called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. The suit allows the wearer to compress the distance between 2 points and step through. Within a range of approximately 500 meters, there is no reaction time fast enough to track it. No defense quick enough to stop it. Ethan stood still now, letting the delegates process what they had seen. "I could have killed 20 of you before anyone realized I had moved," he said. His voice was calm, almost apologetic. "I am not saying this as a threat. I am saying it as a fact. If I wanted to harm the people in this room, there is nothing that could stop me." The hall had gone completely silent again. But this silence was different from before. This was not the silence of mockery waiting to happen. This was the silence of fear. "How?" Vorteth finally managed. "How did you develop this?" "Your species had barely achieved spaceflight when the Harvax attacked. We are thousands of years more advanced than you. How did you surpass us in 3 decades?" Ethan considered the question seriously. "We did not surpass you," he said. "We took a different path. After the war, we had a choice. We could try to catch up, build bigger ships, stronger weapons, thicker armor. We could spend centuries trying to match civilizations that had a massive head start on us. Or," he held up his hand, watching the red lines pulse, "or we could accept what we are. Small, fragile, short-lived, and build around those facts instead of fighting them." He began to walk slowly around the arena, and none of the champions moved to stop him. "The Cathari are made of crystal. The Varan have 4 arms and incredible strength. The Zin have natural armor that nothing can pierce. These are advantages built into your biology. You have spent thousands of years learning to use those advantages. He stopped and faced the crowd. Humans have no natural advantages. We are soft. We are weak. We die easily, and we do not live long. So we had to find other ways. We had to cheat. Cheat? Krath repeated. We could not make ourselves stronger, so we made our technology stronger. We could not make ourselves faster, so we made our machines faster. We could not grow natural armor, so we built armor that bends reality itself. Every limitation became a puzzle. Every limitation became a puzzle. Every weakness became a problem to solve. He gestured at the suit covering his body. This is not our final answer. This is not our best work. This is what we have achieved so far. In 15 years. Imagine what we will create in 50 years. In 100. In 1,000. The ancient Annette delegate, one of the oldest beings in the room, leaned forward in her seat. Her body was made of flowing silver liquid, and she had watched civilizations rise and fall for longer than most species had existed. You are saying that your limitations made you stronger, she said. I am saying that our limitations made us creative, made us desperate, made us unwilling to accept that anything was impossible. Ethan looked directly at her. We lost over 600 million people learning that the universe is not kind. We will spend the rest of our existence making sure we never have to learn that lesson again. Maya watched the delegates' faces. She saw fear, yes, but she also saw something else, something that looked almost like respect. The demonstration is not complete, Ethan said. There is one more thing I want to show you. Something that explains why we are really here today. He reached up and touched a point on his neck. The Prometheus weave suit rippled once and then began to glow brighter. The red lines flared until they were almost too bright to look at. This is what happens when a human stops holding back. The light from Ethan's suit grew so bright that several delegates had to shield their eyes. The red lines that ran across the black material were no longer pulsing gently. They were blazing like rivers of fire. The air around him began to shimmer, as if reality itself was having trouble deciding what was happening. And then, Ethan rose from the ground. He did not jump. He did not use any visible technology. He simply floated upward, defying gravity as easily as breathing. 10 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet. He rose until he was level with the highest tiers of seating, looking down at the thousands of delegates who had gathered to mock him. The Prometheus weave does more than protect and transport, he said, his voice somehow reaching every corner of the hall without being amplified. It connects the wearer to the fundamental forces of the universe: gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces. All of them become tools. He held out his hand, palm up. A sphere of light appeared above it, growing from a tiny point to the size of a human head. It was not fire. It was not plasma. It was pure energy, contained and controlled. I could release this, Ethan said calmly. It would destroy everything within 300 meters. It would kill everyone in this hall. I will not do that, obviously. But I want you to understand something. He closed his hand and the sphere vanished. I am not the strongest human. I am not the smartest. I am not the most skilled at using this suit. I am simply the one who was chosen for this mission because I know how to talk to people. Back on Earth, there are hundreds of soldiers who make me look like a beginner. And we are building more suits every day. He descended slowly, touching down in the center of the arena as gently as a falling leaf. This is not a threat, he said. I want to be very clear about that. Humanity is not here to conquer. We are not here to dominate. We learned from the Harvax what happens to species who think that way. They are gone now, and the galaxy is better for their absence. Maya noticed that several delegates flinched at those words. The destruction of the Harvax collective was still a sensitive topic. After their invasion of Earth had failed, the Harvax had tried to rebuild. They had attacked 3 other species in quick succession, trying to recover their losses. But something had changed. Their confidence was broken. Their tactics were predictable. One by one, their enemies had fought back, and 30 years later, the Harvax were extinct. Nobody talked about who had given those enemies the weapons to win. Nobody asked where the technology had come from. But everyone knew. "We are here," Ethan continued, "because we want you to understand who we are now. Not the scared, primitive species you remember from 3 decades ago. Not the desperate survivors who fought with school bus plating and broken dreams. We are something new. Something the galaxy has never seen before." He looked around at the silent faces. "We are a species that was broken and chose to rebuild ourselves stronger. We are a species that faced extinction and decided that would never happen again. We are a species that turns our fear into fuel and our grief into growth." The ancient Annette delegate rose from her seat. Her liquid silver body flowed down to the arena floor, and she approached Ethan without fear. She was old enough to have seen everything, and she was not easily impressed. But there was something in her eyes that looked very much like wonder. "You speak of what you have become," she said, "but you have not told us what you want. Every species wants something: power, resources, territory, respect. What does humanity want?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "We want to never be afraid again," he said finally. "We want to know that no matter what comes out of the darkness between stars, we will be ready. We want our children to grow up knowing that they are safe." "Those are defensive goals," the Annette observed. "Yet you have built weapons that could conquer half the galaxy." "Yes, we have." Ethan did not look away from her ancient eyes. "Because the only way to ensure that no one ever attacks us again is to make sure that attacking us would be the last mistake anyone ever makes." A murmur ran through the crowd. This was not the humble, grateful attitude that young species usually showed. This was something harder, something that made the older civilizations uncomfortable. "You are saying that you would destroy anyone who threatened you," Verteth said. His crystalline voice was careful now, choosing each word precisely. "I am saying that we could," Ethan replied. "I am also saying that we hope we never have to. We did not come here to threaten anyone. We came here to be honest." He picked up his father's damaged armor from where it lay on the ground. "For 30 years, we have watched the galaxy laugh at us. We have attended these gatherings and sat in the back while other species showed off their power. We have been called primitives, children, insects. We have been told that we should be grateful to even be allowed in the same room as the great civilizations." His voice grew harder. "We let that happen because we were not ready. We needed time. Time to develop. Time to build. Time to make sure that when we finally showed the galaxy what we could do, there would be no question about it." He held up the cracked chest plate. "My father died in this armor. He died fighting an enemy so far beyond us that victory should have been impossible. But he won. He won because he refused to accept that the fight was hopeless. He won because humans do not know how to give up." Ethan set the armor down gently. "Every human alive today carries that same spirit. We are a species shaped by trauma. We survived the worst thing that can happen to a civilization, and instead of breaking us, it made us something new. Something stronger. Something that will never stop pushing forward." Maya felt tears on her cheeks. She was not the only one. Several of the human delegates were openly crying, and even some of the alien observers seemed moved. The proving is supposed to be a demonstration of power, Ethan said. I hope I have given you that. But I also hope I have given you something else. Understanding. Perspective. A reason to look at humans differently than you have before. He faced the High Arbiter, the ancient energy being that had overseen these ceremonies for 3,000 years. We are done hiding. We are done pretending to be less than we are. From this day forward, humanity will stand as equals among the species of this galaxy. Not because we are demanding it, not because we are threatening anyone, but because we have earned it. The High Arbiter pulsed with light, considering his words. The proving has always been about establishing hierarchy, it said, about reminding each species of their place. You are saying that humanity's place has changed. I am saying that we will no longer accept a place assigned to us by others. We will find our own place. And if anyone tries to push us back down, they will discover what happens when you corner a species that has already survived the worst. The hall was silent, not with mockery, not with fear, with something that might have been the beginning of respect. The Anet delegate spoke again, her voice like flowing water. You have shown us power today, Ethan Cole of Earth. But power alone does not earn respect among the old civilizations. What else do you offer? What does humanity bring to the galaxy besides weapons? Ethan smiled. Hope, he said. We bring hope. Because if a species as small and weak as humanity can become what we have become, then anything is possible. Any problem can be solved. Any enemy can be defeated. Any future can be built. He looked up at the thousands of faces watching him. We are proof that the universe rewards those who refuse to accept their limitations. And we are willing to share what we have learned with anyone wise enough to learn alongside us. The silence that followed Ethan's words stretched on for a long time. Thousands of aliens from hundreds of species sat in their seats, processing what they had seen and heard. The universe had shifted slightly, and everyone in the hall could feel it. Verteth was the first to move. The Kethari ambassador who had led the mockery rose from his seat and walked down to the arena floor. His crystalline body caught the light differently now, somehow less arrogant in its beauty. He stopped a few feet from Ethan and performed a complex gesture with his limbs. Maya recognized it from her studies. It was a formal apology in Kethari culture, one that was rarely used because it acknowledged complete wrongness on the part of the speaker. Ethan Cole, Verteth said, I spoke poorly of your armor, of your people, of your right to stand among us. I looked at the surface when I should have been looking at the depths beneath. I was a fool, and I ask your forgiveness. Ethan inclined his head slightly. There is nothing to forgive. You saw what we wanted you to see. The broken armor was meant to invite mockery. It was part of the demonstration. Verteth's crystalline face shifted in what might have been surprise. You wanted us to laugh at you? We wanted you to remember this moment. We wanted the contrast between what you expected and what you received to be as sharp as possible. Today, no one in this hall will forget what they saw. That was the goal. The Varan champion Krath had also risen. He walked to the arena floor with heavy steps, but his forearms hung loosely at his sides now. There was no aggression in his posture. Among my people, he said, we have a concept called the Hidden Blade, a warrior who appears weak so that his enemies will underestimate him. It is considered the highest form of strategy. He knelt on one massive knee, bringing his head closer to Ethan's level. I thought you were prey. I was wrong. You are a hidden blade, and your edge is sharper than anything I have ever seen. One by one, other champions came forward. The Zin clicked the pattern that the translator rendered as profound respect. The snake-like Seleth coiled in a gesture of acknowledgement. Even the massive Gruth, who had said nothing during the entire demonstration, bowed its enormous head. The High Arbiter pulsed with brighter light, drawing everyone's attention. "This is unprecedented," it said. "In 3,000 years of the proving, no demonstration has ever ended this way. The ceremony is meant to continue until all champions have displayed their abilities. Instead, we have witnessed something that makes further demonstration meaningless." "We do not wish to disrupt your traditions," Maya said quickly. "If the other champions want to continue, no." The voice came from the Xin champion. "There's no point. We came here to prove our superiority over younger species. We cannot prove something that is no longer true." A murmur ran through the crowd at this admission. The Xin were one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations in the galaxy. Their natural armor had never been broken. They had never lost a war. For them to acknowledge that humanity had surpassed them was extraordinary. The ancient Annette delegate flowed forward, her silver form catching the light in beautiful patterns. "Perhaps it is time to change the purpose of this gathering," she said. Her voice was thoughtful, considering. For too long, the proving has been about hierarchy, about reminding the young civilizations of their place beneath the old. But today, we have seen that age does not equal strength. Experience does not guarantee wisdom. She turned to face the assembly. Humanity achieved in 3 decades what took us thousands of years. They did it because they had to, because survival demanded innovation, because they refused to accept that their limitations were permanent. Her liquid form rippled. Perhaps that is the lesson we should take from today. Not that humans are powerful, but that any species can become powerful if they have sufficient reason to try. Ethan stepped forward. "That is exactly what we hope you will understand. We are not here to replace you at the top of some hierarchy. We are here to suggest that maybe the hierarchy itself is the problem." "Explain," the High Arbiter said. "The Harvax believed in hierarchy. The strong above the weak. The predators above the prey. Look what happened to them. They became so confident in their position that they stopped growing, stopped innovating, stopped imagining that anything could challenge them. And when something did challenge them, they had no idea how to respond." Ethan looked around the hall. "Every species that reaches for the stars thinks they are special. They think they have figured out the secrets of the universe. They think their way is the right way. And then they meet other species, and they discover that there are 1,000 right ways. 1,000,000. Each one valid. Each one worthy." He picked up his father's armor one more time. "My father died wearing this. He was not special. He was not chosen. He was just a man who fixed air conditioners and loved his family. But when his family was threatened, he became something more. He became a hero. Not because of his genes or his training or his equipment. Because of his choice." Ethan held the armor up so everyone could see. "That is what humanity offers the galaxy. The knowledge that any being can choose to become more than they are. That limitations are just problems waiting for solutions. That even the weakest species can become the strongest if they have the will and the time." The Annette delegate made a sound that the translator could not quite render, but it felt like approval. "You have given us much to consider, Ethan Cole of Earth. Perhaps too much for one day." She turned to the High Arbiter. "I propose that we adjourn this proving, not because it has failed, but because it has succeeded beyond anything we expected. We need time to process what we have witnessed." The High Arbiter pulsed agreement. "Very well. The proving is concluded. All delegates will return to their vessels and consider what they have seen. We will reconvene in one cycle to discuss the implications." The crowd began to disperse, but slowly. Many delegates stopped to look at Ethan as they passed, their expressions a mixture of fear and fascination, and something that might have been hope. A few even stopped to speak with Maya, asking questions about human culture, human technology, human philosophy. Eventually, the great hall was nearly empty. Only a few delegates remained, along with the small human contingent. Ethan stood in the center of the arena, still holding his father's armor. Looking up at the singing crystal walls, Maya approached him carefully. "Commander, are you all right?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I keep thinking about what Dad would say if he could see this. He died thinking he was buying time for a defeated species. He died believing that humanity would always be the underdogs, always fighting just to survive." He touched the crack in the chest plate. "I wish I could tell him that it worked. Then his sacrifice meant something. That we became everything he hoped we could be." Maya put a hand on his shoulder. "He knows. Somehow, I think he knows." They stood together in the emptying hall, two humans among the stars. Behind them, the delegates of 1,000 worlds returned to their ships with new thoughts and new fears and new possibilities spinning in their minds. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The species that had been mocked, dismissed, forgotten, had emerged from the shadows wearing the future itself. And they had done it not by conquering, not by threatening, but by simply showing the truth, that the cracked armor of the past could become the foundation of something incredible. That suffering could become strength. That even the smallest, weakest, most fragile beings in the universe could rise to heights that the ancient powers had never imagined. Ethan Cole carefully placed his father's armor in a carrying case, designed specifically for it. The armor would return to Earth, where it would be displayed in the Memorial of Heroes alongside the equipment of every other soldier who had died saving humanity from the Harvax. But before he closed the case, he whispered something that only Maya could hear. "Thanks, Dad. We made it." Then he straightened his back, adjusted his Prometheus weave suit, and walked out of the hall to face whatever came next. Behind him, the crystal walls sang a new song, one that sounded almost like applause. The mocking was over. The silence had fallen, and humanity was just getting started.